Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Gary Jones with us. He's CEO at MediMusic. He's a health and well-being technologist in Northern England. Gary has a cool background. He's currently raising, but was CEO of Unimedia Limited back then, and had a bunch of cool experiences the music industry. And he was also the co-founder of Cortez. So we're going to talk about his background today and what led him to MediMusic. This podcast is brought to you by podper.com. If you want to start your podcast, get guests, get great sponsors, insights, connections, and data, you can go to podper.com. We help you start your pod. All we need is 1.5 hour to get you launched. Gary, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, my kind of background's in technology. I started off working for record labels and then went back to university to study journalism, got involved in a kind of circuitous career across analog and digital content management and distribution. Back in 2014, I went to work for a company called Omniphone, who were the largest wholesale distributor of streaming music. So provided the background for Sirius FM, Samsung Milk, and Sony's Music Unlimited platform, which I ran for 4 years across 19 countries. Omniphone eventually got bought by Apple. And kind of that was where I cut my teeth to get where I am today. I met Professor Mark Sandler from Queen Mary University, London, introduced me to music information retrieval algorithms that extract the digital DNA of a piece of music, tempo, frequencies, that kind of thing. And I just thought, wow, if we could use this to mimic the human brain's response to music, then we may well dispense music as medicine. And we all self-medicate with music. It's nothing new. Some of the great thinkers of our time, Plato, Confucius, Tolstoy, Martin Luther King, have all extolled its benefits. So that was kind of my eureka moment. And in the years leading up to launching MediMusic in 2020, I just read as many scientific papers as I could. I mean, there's 40 years of research, 25,000 papers on PubMed. The science is solid. Music reduces pain and anxiety and makes drugs more performant. So,
yeah. And how do you know in a patient that it's actually reducing their stress levels? How do you monitor the stress itself?
There's a number of ways you can do that. In a trial situation, you'd use what's called galvanic skin response. So you'd measure the skin conductivity, but it's things like heart rate variability, which is the beats between each heartbeat. So the time between each heartbeat, and the more variable that time is, and it's obviously milliseconds, the fitter or healthier or the less anxious you are, the more rigid it is, the more anxious you are. So heart rate variability is key to everything.
And skin conducting, are you referring to like goosebumps that you get when you listening to a song?
You could say that, but no, it's just the electricity kind of connected across the skin, which we all do, and that's one way of measuring anxiety and stress. But the best way by far is heart rate variability. In some instances, depending on the level of stress, cortisol measurements would be good. But at this moment in time, there isn't a wearable that's accurate enough in terms of measuring cortisol.
And what's the goosebumps phenomena? Have you studied that one? What's the biochemical that gets released when your song is so good that you get goosebumps?
I suspect it's endorphin and dopamine. Dopamine is what they call the happy drug. But when music stimulates in more parts of the brain than any other stimulus, or involves more parts of the brain than any other stimulus. It increases dopamine, increases oxytocin, increases immunoglobulin, smooths the breathing, smooths the digestive system, and probably most importantly, negates the production of cortisol, the stress hormone. Long-term exposure to that is bad for all of us and can result in dual morbidities. So that's kind of what music does. It's fascinating, and like I said, it's not a new science. It's been around for 40 years. It's just we're in a fortunate position to be able to sort of do what we do and hopefully turn it into something that can be dispensed, where music can be dispensed in 5, 10, 15 years time clinically as a medicine.
Right. And why do you think so few have done what you're doing right now? Because music historically have been sort of bastardized economically, right? Like people are not willing to pay for music a lot. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I think music's become, you're right. I mean, like I said, I worked on record labels and music's become a commodity. And with the advent of Spotify and digital streaming, there's obviously an awful lot of it out there. I think the music business is potentially in the best place it could be moving forward. AI has obviously changed and will change a lot, and that kind of landscape is still evolving, and still far too new to make any sort of judgment calls on it. But to answer your first question, I think it's just been in the right place at the right time. I worked the advent of streaming music and the advent of AI puts us in a position where we're able to do that. And it was just an idea that I had. There are a couple other people out there doing it. But what we're trying to do is we're approaching it from B2B rather than B2C. So our customer base are hospitals and dental practices and those kind of things. And at the same time, we want to be able to return to them KPIs that show a cost benefit. And also patient benefit, and nobody's kind of ever done that before. So whilst that in itself is exciting, it's also challenging because you're obviously selling a new concept into a new market.
Right, and you're also disrupting sort of big pharma if you're reducing the need for relevant drugs by 24%.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily we're disrupting it, but I think we complement it. We've had conversations with a couple of big pharmas about how music could be used in up to the point at which a painkiller kicks in. So I mean, it's generally kind of 20 minutes before a painkiller kicks in properly, and then obviously there's a half-life and it starts to wear off, and you're not supposed to take additional painkillers within a certain period of time. So can we address that gap between the half-life coming down and the next batch kicking in, as it were? I think the big pharma has to adopt digital therapies, digital therapeutics. The world spends a fortune on drugs, and we've seen the problems they cause with opiates and things like that. We're running a trial this year that looks at chronic back pain and opiate tapering and whether we can use music, and we believe we can. The science is out there to actually reduce opiate consumption or make opiates more performant, so you take less.
And to musicophiles, I believe we called ourselves, like you and I, it's pretty basic knowledge that they should have headphones and good music in hospitals. Why isn't it the case? Why are we missing out such obvious healing alternatives and practices like that?
Some do, more so in the US than the UK. I mean, I've been to hospitals in New York and in San Francisco that even have small recording studios and music rooms for patients. But I think it's delivering the technology and understanding it. That one of the challenge, and to some extent, until really the last 2 or 3 years, music's obviously being viewed as an art form, but it's not. It has medical capabilities. It does, whilst it affects the human psyche, it does affect the physiological system in a very, very strong and prevalent way. And I think, it's just us being in the right place at the right time. Some places do it, some care homes do it. They'll dispense music, but our objective is to reduce anxiety and reduce pain rather than just give out a generic playlist. There's a lot of argument and nuances involved in how we create the playlist. So we also create a playlist individual that's specific to the individual, that's designed to increase heart rate variability, and we do that through a number of algorithms and AI. And I think when you can do that and you can show a cost benefit, then that's when it becomes a difference.
Right. And would you get in the hardware space also, because the pair of headphones you'd be prescribing them would be different depending on the patient?
We have done. It varies by use case. We've done a lot of work with the NHS in the UK, and they don't want branded tablets lying around. They only want one power supply. So we're looking at using smartphones, customized smartphones that sit in a rack that effectively do what the hospital requires, in terms of workflow and in terms of being neat and tidy. We've provided we've designed a piece of hardware that's being used in ICU at the moment, ICU unit in the north of England, where it's CPAP hoods are these transparent hoods that are used for oxygenation purposes. It takes 2 nurses to put them on. They've got to be watertight, but they're very noisy inside. And I don't get claustrophobia, but when I put one in, my heart rate went from 67 to 109 quite quickly. So, people get anxious. Nurses can't talk to them. So we designed a piece of hardware that enables that to happen and deliver a piece of music. So it's a mix. There will be a mix. It depends on the use case, really.
Right. Talking about other use cases, I believe dementia, right? It's quite known that when you put music to an Alzheimer patient or dementia patient, you can get an increase in cognitive flows and
Yeah,
they
I mean,
remember stuff all of a sudden.
that's what started me on this journey, to be honest. A friend's mother developed dementia, so I saw this lady go from being incredibly mentally strong and very independent woman to quite the opposite as a result of vascular dementia. And she was in her 90s, and she and her husband had been together for years and years and years, and it frustrated him. So dementia just doesn't affect the individual who's been diagnosed with it. It also affects the immediate family as well, and it can manifest itself in a number of ways. I mean, there are 100 different dementia types, and violence and aggression is comes out in some of them, brought about by anxiety, and it's normally around the end of the day in a period called sundowning. And we look to address that by invoking relaxation, and we did a trial with Lancashire Teaching Hospital NHS Trust in the north of England, and we got 61.5% of the cohort back within their resting heart rate range, which anything over 30% in a trial is significant. So 61.5, we were thrilled, and the cost benefit of that was £27,000 saving in staffing and intervention costs.
Right. Another cool use case is during surgery, right, for the patient, but also the surgeon and their team, I would guess, getting them into flow state. Would that be a cool use case for you?
Yeah, pre and post op is the sweet spot for me. Really, that's what I want. It's a horrible expression, but it's kind of people. There are people in a position they're not going to move, so you're able to. It's the perfect environment in some respects, insofar as delivering this goes. And a study by the Lancet, which is the leading British medical journal, did a systematic review of over 3,400 papers that categorically prove using music in a surgery pre and post operatively will not only reduce anxiety but pain as well. And then there's the value add in terms of throughput. Does this get a patient out of post op quicker back onto a ward or discharged quicker? So there are cost benefits there that nobody studied, and it's something that we want to look at over the coming years.
Right. Now, let's say that I'm a decision maker at a hospital and I'm interested in your solution. How do you actually monetize? What's the pricing? What's the cycle? Tell me a bit more about the
It's
product and
subscription
business
based. It's
itself.
subscription based. So we there are two subscription levels: a master account and a sub account. A master account allows you to connect sub accounts. So one of the areas we're looking at is music therapy. Trying to make music therapy scalable. So at the moment, if I was a music therapist and you came to me, when you leave my clinic, I don't see, there's no engagement between us until I see you next time. On the whole, what I can do with MediMusic is take my MediMusic account, set up a sub account, give it to you so that you can then monitor. I can then monitor you, whether you're continuing things and set you tasks and stuff. And within MediMusic, what we do, the way we measure is that once the playlist is created, there are a number of clinical scales that you can put before the listening process. So things like GAD and PHQ. The obvious one to us would be the pain scale. What level of pain you're in. I'm at pain level 8. You listen to the music, then what level of pain you're in. I'm in pain level 6, and that goes into our health economic component, and that's what returns the KPIs. For the music therapist, you can also put questionnaires in there and those kind of things. So at the moment we're looking at running a campaign where we actually give away MediMusic for a year for free to music therapists in the UK, and it's something we may replicate in the US. We're opening in the US. We're just currently incorporating in the US, and we hope to be open there sometime later on this year.
Right. And you're mentioning funding. Have you done a pre-seed yet? How much are you looking to raise? And
We did.
What is the main advantage of investing in MediMusic right now?
We did a pre-seed. We're out on a seed B now. We're looking for 1.2 million. We've got about 950k sterling of that on the table. The advantage of investing in MediMusic, I guess, is summed up. I was in Belgium recently. And attended California, which is Europe's biggest music and tech accelerator, and had a particular focus on health. 140 companies applied, 8 got through. We got voted startup of the year. And whilst I was doing my pitch, I turned around, one of the lines was, we believe this to be a 100 million market. At the end, in the Q&A session, two investors there who were health focused, music and health focused, turn around and disagree with me about that. They think it's 250 million. And if you think about the cost of dementia, you think about the social cost of agitation in dementia, you think about drug costs and all those kind of things, you can see it's a big market.
Right. And tell me about some AI component in there. If you would have AI to analyze all the patient data and to refer them at an automated playlist in real time, could that be done?
Yeah, that's so the AI, when you're in the music industry, you've got to be very, very careful that our AI doesn't touch music at all. We're not involved, and we're not involved in generative AI either. We've got direct deals with all the record labels. So all the content is actually licensed from the labels themselves. The AI also creates a playlist that's built on a study of how we consume music. Is meant for men and women, it's different. Our physiology is different. How our music tastes change. The advent of social events like punk music in the 70s in the UK and those kind of things, which also creates a playlist that we've shown to be 97% accurate. And then in terms of the AI refinement, later on this year, we're launching part of our service called the digital drip. And what that does is because we know how somebody should respond roughly to a piece of music, if they don't respond in the way that we expect, then we can dynamically swap tracks out to increase their heart rate variability, either faster or slower. That whole event will be recorded by, I guess, our AI machine learning side of component that will refine the fingerprint and use for later use, either earlier in a playlist or for a different use case, so that maybe in 5, 10 years, 15 years time, we can say we're dispensing music as medicine. Right.
And couldn't the headphones themselves measure the heart rate variability?
Yeah, there are some, and we've looked. I mean, to your point, your question earlier about hardware. I mean, the challenge with any kind of hardware is that market is moving so fast. There are Apple are about shortly to launch AirPods that will measure heart rate variability. There are a number of solutions out there that will measure heart rate variability, but they're mainly for clinical trials. I'm aware of the wearable that's being developed by a university in the UK that will measure cortisol. So it's a fast-moving area, and to the point where ECG, actually measuring brainwaves as well, or kind of like getting an MRI equivalent that you could use. I mean, there's the science is fascinating. The pace at which it's moving forward and the potential impact it could have on our service.
Yeah, I had the co-founder of an ECG that measures brain waves on my podcast 2 weeks ago. Do you think that the pre-interview as well could be made by an AI? What's your pain levels in the headphones? The AI would ask them that, monitor their responses, simple ChatGPT integration.
It will definitely go that way. But in certain cases, you've got to remember for dementia, there are challenges with each and every vertical. If you're in pre and post-op, you're going to be at least, when you come out of the operation, you're going to be coming around after an anesthetic. With dementia, there's a lack of capacity, so you've got to address that. So it is different and it is difficult. And again, things like red flag tracks. So within dementia, there are tracks that we call red flag tracks that we try to capture with families and through heart rate measurement, because they're tracks that can remind someone of a traumatic event, and they end up achieving exactly opposite of what you want to achieve.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been using Brain.fm for a while. Had the CEO on my podcast as well. I think they're really like the precursor in the AI space, but their AI seems sort of weak compared to what there is nowadays with softwares like Suno, right? You can prompt and then get a personalized track. Don't you think that would be a faster, better model just to connect to these APIs instead of licensing the songs? It seems that that would cost a fortune to buy all these songs.
The challenge with generative AI or any unknown music, so let's put generative AI into composed music, is that familiarity is key, particularly in dementia. If you pay a dementia patient a track they don't know versus a track they do know, you're going to get a completely different response. In fact, with the first instance, you'll probably get no response at all. So familiarity is key for all of us. if you think about there are certain exceptions to that. So there are different listener types. People that can't live without music, and musicians, they're more open to new tracks and new ideas and new material. Whereas those that come see come say in terms of whether they listen to music or not, you have to, familiarity is key, and research has shown it to at least result in a minimum of a 30% better response to the music.
How do you use music as a CEO to optimize your daily performances?
I use it all the time. If I've got a really difficult task, I'll use Mozart. If I'm just kind of doing basic stuff, just house husbandry or things like that, I've got a whole selection of playlists. My music tastes are very, very wide.
Right. And what's next for you as a CEO this year? What's your main priority other than the funding round you're in right now?
Yeah. All right. Well, assuming we get that out of the way, it's just to launch it and get it out there properly. I mean, we've got our first 2 customers lined up. As soon as we're ready to launch, we've got to close off the content exposure to our algorithms and get out in the US. I think that this year is to get to the US, but I think we'll also be, whilst we're closing a funding round now, we'll be out on a Series A before the end of this year.
Love that. And where can people find out more about you, Gary?
MediMusic.co, or look me up on LinkedIn, Gary Jones, CEO of MediMusic.
It was Gary Jones and Charles Corner.